Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Collis Stutzer with the Collis Stutzer Show, and I just wanted to drop in to talk with you guys about what this course is. This is the introduction to simply podcasting, how to start a podcast 101. I was thinking, hey, I need to share a little bit about how I got started in podcasting and some of the little things that I learned that helped me get, my podcast up and running. And now we're coming up on our 100th episode here in a few weeks. And it's just an exciting time, and I thought it would be a perfect time to run through this course. So I'm selling this course for $1. I'm selling it for $1 because this is rough on the edges. It is the 101. It's the basics. It's just the simple information you may need to just go and take action, to go get that start. And in the future, I do plan on doing a more in-depth, more high quality version of, a podcasting course. But for right now, we are just going to focus on simply podcasting, just the simple act of getting started, the simple act of making it happen, the simple act of taking action on the thing that you've been talking about for so many months, so many weeks, so many years, right? Some of us have been talking about doing podcasts since 2016. Some of us have been talking about it since last week. Some of us have been talking about it since 6 months ago, but a lot of us have taken action and a lot of us haven't taken action. This is specifically for those who haven't taken action, just to kind of give you a little bit more comfortability, a little bit more confidence in doing it and just getting started. So with that being said, let's talk about the first slide. So let's get into it. All right. Slide number 1, coming up with an idea or a concept. This is the most important thing, in my opinion, is coming up with an idea or a concept for starting the podcast. I think it's really important, but I also think that it might be easy because this probably already happened. This is probably the reason you're thinking about podcasting already, because you've already come up with a cool idea with your friends, your family, or yourself, or a cool concept about what would be a great podcast. And you're like, oh, I should do a podcast around that. So you probably already have this. But yeah, written here, a successful podcasts are all about building communities around niche topics, whether that's kombucha, Oldsmobiles, tech entrepreneurship, or like me, yes, me, the video man you're looking at right now. I like to tell stories of minority creatives and entrepreneurs, share their life journey, and pair their story and their experiences from their life journey with business concepts that can kind of help other potential or people who are interested in becoming entrepreneurs take action and understand that you don't have to be some special person to be an entrepreneur. I mean, you do have to be special. You got to have that grit, but you can come from nothing. You can come from something. You can, be black, white, Mexican. You can be whatever, and you can make something happen in any industry, in any business. Okay. So one thing that I tell people is to ask yourself these 3 questions when you're thinking about an idea or a concept for a podcast. Number 1, what is it that you and your friends or coworkers are talking about when you get together? What conversations, what topics are you and your friends at work or you and your friends in the basement playing video games talking about when you hang out? Are you talking about sports and LeBron James or who the greatest player ever is and talking about stats of the NBA? Are you doing the same thing for the NFL? Or maybe you are really interested in small businesses and you're always talking about small local businesses in the area owned by Samoan people. Or maybe you're really interested in pizza and the pizza industry. Whatever it is that you and your friends talk about, think about that and ask yourself, would this be a good topic? Could I build a podcast around this topic? Another question that you can ask is, what's something that I know a lot about that people come to you to talk about? Is it relationships? Are you a personal trainer? Are you a specialist on bikes? Are you a specialist on cars? What is it that people come to talk to you about? And could you take that same topic and talk about it in depth and be knowledgeable about that topic on a podcast for 5, 10, 15, 20, or 30 minutes? And then number 3, what type of people do you want to know or build relationships with? I think this is very important. A lot of people, like myself, want to get into podcasts so they can build out their network, know more people in a certain industry. So what people in what industry are the type of people that you want to be around, that you want to create relationships with? When you can think about that, when you have an answer for these 3 questions, or even one, it puts you in a better place for starting a podcast and having a strong idea to move forward with. slide number 2. So slide number 2 is about the design, artwork, and the podcast description. So we talked about in slide 1 about coming up with a concept or an idea. Once you build that out, the next thing that's important is the design artwork. What is your cover art going to look like? So if you're looking in the corner at the video of me, you'll kind of see a circular image or a square image for all podcasts that you come across. And in that little profile photo will be the College Stetzer Show, the Culture Talks podcast, My First Million podcast, Earn Your Leisure with 2 emojis on there. There's so many different design artwork ideas you could use for your podcast. But let's say you chose to be a specialist in kombucha and you want to talk about kombucha. So what would be some really cool design artwork that could catch somebody's eye who's interested in kombucha? It could be you and an emoji of your face biting into a bottle of kombucha, or it could be kombucha bottle of a company that you think is a terrible kombucha shattering against a wall. Whatever it is that you think will catch people's eye and will be great artwork is important. And so when we think about branding our podcast, we at some point have to consider our podcast cover photo and our podcast description. So if our podcast cover photo is on point, awesome. That might get somebody to click on the podcast to see what it's all about. But now we have to get our podcast description down. So when you're writing your podcast description, I want you to ask yourself these 3 questions. When you can ask yourself these 3 questions and answer them effectively and write down some notes around these 3 questions, you'll be able to better put together a solid podcast description. So question number 1 is, how do you want potential customers to feel when they see your podcast artwork? So this is more towards the artwork, but this is an important question to think about. How do you want that cover image to make somebody feel? When I see my cover art, I want to change it because I think it's dope. People are like, who the hell is who is Colin Stetzer? Like, who the hell is that? Nobody knows me yet. I'm not a big famous name. I'm not somebody super cool or popular yet. So when people see the Colin Stetzer Show, it's not really going to encourage them to click on it because they don't know who I am. So right now I'm in the process of coming up with better design artwork that would encourage somebody to click on the podcast in order to read the description and see what it's all about. Question number 2, what thoughts do you want flowing through your potential listeners' brain when they view your artwork in your podcast description? Do you want them to be happy, joyful? Do you want them to be angry? Do you want them to be thoughtful? Do you want them to be super hyper and excited? What type of emotions do you want flowing through the potential listener when they see your artwork and when they read your podcast description, specifically when they read your podcast description? When you have a podcast description written down on paper, you should read it and it should make you feel how you want your potential listeners to feel. So really keep that in mind when you're writing out the description for your podcast. Number 3, this is really the most important. Who is your audience? Who are you trying to speak to? If you're trying to speak to young people, you can't write in a way that is more for somebody that's 75 and interested in cars, and you're over here trying to have people listen to your podcast about 25-year-old entrepreneurs. You have to write, your copy has to be written in a certain way that encourages that age group, that audience, to listen to your podcast. And you need your description and your artwork to make that obvious. It should be obvious that this podcast is not for you. You know what I'm saying? You want your audience to know that this podcast, that this platform that they're about to click on and listen to is for them. You want to make them feel that way with the way you write in your description and the way your artwork is portrayed to the audience, right? So just a quick bonus. If you're looking for somebody to create some artwork for you, go to fiverr.com, Fiverr, or you can also use Upwork, but I would suggest using Fiverr. That's where I find all of my freelance graphic designers. Also, look locally. If you're already connected to your creative community in your area, like I am, reach out to some local graphic designers. That way you can meet up with them in person and really help them understand your vision for the artwork. You can also look at the description for School of Greatness podcast, Hustle to Freedom, or whatever topic you're interested in creating a podcast about. Go find the most popular podcast right now in that industry or in that world and look at their artwork and look at their description and then kind of pull from that and let that inspire you. Episode 3 is going to be all about finding the right equipment, So I think that this is such a simple but important thing to cover. And the reason why is it's one of the bottlenecks for every single person who's thinking about starting a podcast is they're like, I can't afford the equipment. I don't know the right equipment. I don't know what's going to sound good. I want to have the best podcast audio quality ever on my first episode. The reality is you just need to start. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, when it comes to anything, you just need to start. You need to know the basics, which is the point of this podcast course. You need to know the simple basics, the very baseline basics, the baseline framework that you need. And then you just need to get started. You just need to take action. You just need to do it. It's not going to be perfect on episode 1 through 10. It'll get better 1 through 10, but it won't be as good as 10 through 20. 10 through 20 won't be as good as 20 through 30. And then there might be 30 through 40 where something happens and the quality falls back to what it was from 0 through 10. But if the content is good, you're consistent, and you continually put out content, quality content, you're exciting. People want to listen to you. The topics you talk about, the research you do is good. People will listen to you regardless if the audio or the video is top tier. Listen, just start. But without, to finalize that rant, you have 3 options when you first get started. You can keep it simple, you can go the intermediate route, or you can go the advanced route. Now, I provided my opinions of what's simple, my opinions of what's intermediate, and my opinions of what's advanced. But let's start there. So, number 1, the one I suggest, especially for new podcast guys, new podcast girls, and new podcast old men, and new podcast old women. This is what I suggest for you. Keep it simple. iPhone voice recorder. Excuse me. Yes, I burped live. Not editing it out. iPhone voice recorder. If you don't have an iPhone, Samsung, whatever phone you have most likely has a voice recorder. Use that voice recorder, and then take your laptop or another phone or whatever video camera you have. Press start on both of them at the same time, or press them at different times and just edit it so it matches, and record your podcast. So I'm going to give you an example. So if you're looking at the screen right now, got my iPhone. I can literally put an AirPod in, or I can put a headphone in, and I can go to my voice recorder. So let's go. Let's go here. We are in the search area, voice memos for iPhones. Click on voice memos. Once you click on voice memos, there's a red button right there. You press it to record. You can literally press and record. I am literally recording right now. I can record straight in the phone. I don't even need headphones. I can talk for an hour. And as soon as I'm finished with the podcast, I just end it, and then I can save that file, upload it to my computer, and upload it to whatever platform I'm using to get it on all platforms. And boom, shabow. Will the audio be amazing? No. Will the quality be top tier? No. But will people be able to hear you? Yes. You can start with your iPhone voice recorder. Maybe you don't have an iPhone, but you have a laptop. Take your laptop, download Zoom, press record. You can do a solo Zoom. You don't have to have anybody on the Zoom call. You can do a solo Zoom, and you can screen record your solo Zoom, and you can, like, on the Zoom app on your computer, and you can do a live episode right there. Not only do you have video, but you'll also have audio. It'll automatically save both files separately. So if you do know how to edit your audio, or you do want to edit your video, you can outside of Zoom. Those are 2 options. So we got the laptop audio and video with Zoom. You have just audio using the iPhone voice recorder if you'd like, or you can use your iPhone voice recorder and record on Zoom. And then the last option is if you do have a mic, or you don't even need to have a mic, but if you just want to edit your audio, download Audacity, Audacity, Audacity. You can download that, and you can record directly into Audacity from a microphone, or you can upload your audio and edit it there. Simple. Intermediate would be get a Blue Yeti mic from Best Buy, about $90. Get a pop filter. Just Google pop filter, and you're good to go. Plug it into your laptop, record into Audacity. Simple, easy. Audio will be a little bit better because it'll be a professional mic, and you'll have a pop filter, so the audio is a little bit more clear and won't pick up as much outside noise. And then if you see on the screen here, you can also get a Zoom recorder, a Zoom H4n recorder. Just Google those options, and you can find those. Advanced would be a Shure mic, Rode mic, last video ended, I only have a 5-minute timer per video, so I kind of rushed the last one. But like I said, intermediate, you have the option to get a Blue Yeti mic, plug it into your laptop, and use Audacity to record from your mic to your laptop to Audacity. Audio will be a little bit clear, and then you can obviously, save that audio file. Another option is downloading GarageBand. You can also use a mic to your computer and record via GarageBand. And then the last option, this is a mobile option. There's something called a Zoom H4n Recorder. So you'll have to buy a mic, and then you'll buy this Zoom H4n Recorder. You'll plug the mic XLR cable into it, and you can record on the go wherever you're at. Just have this little handy dandy mobile Zoom H4n Recorder, and then have the mics in your backpack, and you can literally record wherever you want. Now, an advanced option is two of the top mics that you'll hear about in the podcast community are Shure mics, SHURE, or Rode mics, which are RODE. So those are going to be two options you have for top tier advanced mics, Shure mics and Rode mics. And you can download Adobe Audition, which is audio recording platform through Adobe software. You can get a boom arm, so that a boom arm is just what you'll see in most podcasts, how that arm sits in front of people's faces with the mic connected to it. You can move it around like this. You see it at a lot of radio stations. You can buy a boom arm off of Amazon. You can put sound absorbing foam up in your room and then add a pop filter to the mic to reduce the amount of scratching and outside noises. And that would be the advanced version. But let's move on to the next slide. So find the right equipment, but keep it simple at first. iPhone voice recorder, laptop using Zoom, or just get Audacity and record directly to Audacity. Finding a podcast host. So a podcast host is simply the hosting platforms. You take your podcast audio that you recorded, you upload it to a podcast host such as Buzzsprout, Podbean, Libsyn, Anchor, and then those platforms automatically distribute your podcast to Spotify, Apple, YouTube, Google Play, and things like that. I'm personally biased when it comes to podcast hosts because I've been using Anchor from the start. I use Anchor because it's simple to use. It auto uploads to all platforms. They have a music partnership with Spotify, so you can use any music from Spotify in your podcast. The only limiter on that is if you do use that music partnership option with Spotify, is you can only upload your podcast to Spotify and Anchor if you use that. Now, if you don't use any music, from big artists through Spotify, then you can upload it to all platforms. It's also super easy to integrate sponsorships into it, and it's free, which is my favorite thing. Another option, which you've probably heard of, is Buzzsprout. They're kind of one of the most popular ones. They're well known, widely used. They also distribute to all major platforms like Apple, Spotify, Google Play, Stitcher, and such. The only issue with Buzzsprout is they don't have an unlimited plan. So after about 90 days, there is a fee to continue hosting on their platform. If you're not looking to pay, if you don't have a lot of money, and you're not looking to invest out of pocket in your podcast, stick with Anchor. Another option that's also huge is Libsyn, Libsyn. They've been in the game for about 16 years, and they have similar benefits to the two mentioned above. I don't think they're completely free. I think they also have a subscription model like Buzzsprout. So just be aware of that. My overall suggestion would be to do your research on who has the best statistics, which I believe is probably Buzzsprout, and whose premium plan is most affordable, and then to go with them. Anchor has some subpar statistics, but not the best. So if you're looking for something free, quick, easy to use, super beginner user friendly, Anchor is my suggestion. If you're looking for a little bit better statistics that also distributes to all major platforms, and is quality and well known in the industry, but you'll have to pay a fee, I would suggest Buzzsprout. Those would be my two suggestions. But after you record your first episode, you will need to upload it to a podcast hosting platform like Buzzsprout, Podbean, Libsyn, Anchor to be able to get it to go across all platforms. So just be conscious of that and then select the one that works best for you. Okay, we have slide 6 here. This is all about curating your episodes. So you have the topic, you have the design artwork, You have the podcast description down. You also have chosen your podcast hosting platform. You've got the mic setups and you know how to record your episode. You've recorded your first episode. You've uploaded it to one of the podcast hosting platforms. Or my bad. So either way, you have everything set in order, right? And you're getting ready to go into your first podcast recording session. This is how you can curate your episodes, by asking yourself these questions and answering them. Number one, is there research involved or will you be winging it? As you can see with what I'm doing right now, I am winging this podcast course straight up to your face. I have experience with podcasts, done over 95 episodes, over 85 interviews, uploaded. I've used SoundCloud, I've tried Buzzsprout, I've tried Anchor. I promote across social platforms. I've been trying my best to get better and better. So I've experience, but I'm definitely winging this podcast course. Some episodes of my podcast, I wing it. I know what I want to talk about, but I don't feel like drawing out my whole podcast and breaking it down. I just go in there, I freestyle. So you have options. You can do your research, really understand the topic you're going to talk about, break down the specific pieces of information that you want to discuss and touch on, or you can freestyle it. Number two, will you have an intro or will you just jump straight into the conversation? So if you listen to podcasts already, sometimes you'll hear an intro. They'll have music, boom, cha 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 cha, boom, cha 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 cha. The calls list starts the show, right? And then the intro's done and then they start the conversation. Or they do a whole intro like, welcome back to another episode of the blah, blah, blah. Last week we talked about this. This week we'll be talking about this. They have an intro. Or you might have heard some podcasts where the recording starts and all of a sudden people are already mid-conversation talking about something. Both are options. You got to see what your audience likes. First, you got to test out both and see what you want to do first. If you're not sure which one you want to do, then do both and then ask your audience. Or if you don't have an audience yet, ask your friends and family and your girlfriend or your boyfriend and ask them how they feel about when you jump straight into the episode, or if they like a full-on intro first and then move forward from there. Will there be closing remarks or will there just be a cold ending? This is very similar to the question before this. You know, some at the end of certain podcasts, they have closing remarks. Make sure you leave a 5-star review. Make sure you share this podcast. If you really enjoyed this, make sure you shoot us an email, blah, blah, blah. And they might say the same closing remarks at the end of each episode. Or some people will be like, and that's it, folks. End. And it's a cold ending. So you got to decide. Do you want to have closing remarks or will there just be a cold ending? If you can't decide, do what I said on question number 2 about the intro and test both out and then ask friends and family about which one they think sounds better. Or if you build an audience quickly or you already have an audience on another platform and now you're putting a podcast out and that audience transfers over there, ask that audience which one they prefer and then continue moving forward with that. Number 4, will you have music or a jingle? So is there going to be an undertone of music, like a background music throughout the episode? Are you going to edit in music at points where the episode is getting dark or mysterious? Or will there be a jingle that people recognize your podcast by? These are important things to consider when you think about branding the audio portion of your podcast. You can brand it through the description. You can brand it through the art and the design artwork of your cover art, but you also need to brand the audio. Certain things, when they hear that, they'll be like, oh, I know what that is. As soon as, if they don't have an image to look at and they're just in the car and a sound comes on, they should know it's your podcast. So what are you doing to brand the audio? In terms of breaking down the podcast and making it like, a little bit more organized, I always think the best way to go about it is 3 topics and a conclusion. Choose 3 topics you want to cover in the episode. And then, of course, within those 3 main topics, there's always going to be some subtopics that you touch on, but always have a conclusion. So 3 topics and a conclusion is my go-to if I want a structured podcast. Last but not least, decide if you want to have segues and advertisements. Or not if you want to have segues and advertisements. Decide if you want to have advertisements and sponsorships and really master segueing into that advertisement. So with that being said, since we just talked about bath cleaning, this is our advertiser. So that's a way to curate your episode. All right. So 7 slides. Like I said, this podcast is a quick 101, $1 $1 of your time, and hopefully $1 worth of value, okay? Listen, let's talk about social media and content creation, okay? So, record your full podcast on an iPhone or better quality camera, number one. 2, take full podcasts and upload natively on Facebook and YouTube. All right. 3, pull 5 to 10 1 to 3 minute highlight clips to post on Instagram, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Facebook, Twitter. Number 4, send highlight clips to guests and ask them to repost. Number 5, post highlights in Facebook groups and Twitter threads that are relevant to the topic discussed or have podcast community, Facebook group podcast communities, or Twitter threads talking about podcasts. Okay, I went through that fast just to give you guys a quick rundown. Let's go through each one more time. So we're talking about content creation with your podcast, how to push the podcast, how to get more eyes on the podcast, how to bring more attention to the podcast. The best way to do that is through content creation and scaling that, sharing as much content as possible, putting it out there, highlighting the best portions or the most interesting portions of the podcast and getting eyes in front of it so that people go to your bio or they ask you where they can find the podcast or they get more interested, right? You're basically baiting them with content until they bite and get stuck on your podcast on the hook because they love it so much, right? All right. Number 1. First thing you're going to do is you have to record the podcast, obviously. So you record the full podcast in full. If you have an iPhone or if you have a video guy or if you record it on Zoom, you also get the video recording. You take that recording, you take that content, and you upload the full podcast natively to Facebook and YouTube. All that means is you're not sharing a link on those platforms. You're uploading it directly to those platforms. So take the full podcast and upload it to your Facebook page, and take the full podcast and upload it to your YouTube page. After you do that, you're going to go back into the original file on your computer. You're going to edit. You're going to pull clips, 5 to 10, 30-second to 1-minute clips that you think are high touch point clips, like they're high value clips. So there's something really interesting the guest said, something really valuable the guest said, or something shocking the guest said. Find one of those things, shocking, valuable, or interesting, and find 10 to 5 clips at 30 seconds to 1 minute and cut those up and take those clips and post them on your Instagram page, post them on your LinkedIn page, post them on your Snapchat, post them on your Facebook, post them on your Twitter. So, and TikTok. Let's not forget TikTok. Instagram and TikTok and Snapchat do really good with quick 15 to 30-second snippets. LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter do pretty good with 1 to 3 minute clips. Just make sure the whole clip is interesting and it doesn't die off throughout the clip, okay? Then you're going to take those clips that you cut, those highlighted clips, and you're going to send them to your guests. You can use WeTransfer. That's the easiest way to do it. WeTransfer.com. Doesn't require you to create an account or pay anything. You can send those clips to their email. Easy. Bada. Take those highlight clips, send them to the guests, and ask them to repost on their social platforms. That way, their audience also sees those highlight clips, and it will bring more eyes outside of your direct audience to your podcast. And then their audience might share it with their audience, and it goes on and on. Domino effect. Last but not least, take those highlight clips and post them in Facebook groups, in Twitter threads, in Reddit threads, what else? And I don't know what other platforms. Tumblr threads that are relevant to the topic being discussed in the video or that are relevant to the podcast industry. If you do that consistently at scale and the content is good, I promise you it will help your podcast grow. With that being said, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, to tuning in to the Simply Podcasting How to Podcast 101 with Kyle Stutzer. If you're interested in checking out my podcast, it is the Kyle Stutzer Show. I talk to minority creatives and entrepreneurs about their life journey, pair those life journeys and lessons from their life journeys with business lessons. And then I have another podcast called the 101 Show, which is what it sounds like. Check me out. Hopefully you enjoyed this. If not, thank you for the $1.